that peer pressure can come from strangers, or it can come from people very close to you, which of course is a lot harder to deal with.
It's a lot more painful.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
When it's your parents or your siblings or somebody just super close that's questioning
Or your pastor.
your judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
questioning your judgment on what you're doing for your children, that can be really, really unsettling, really destabilizing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast, where our goal is to help you thrive in your homeschool journey. Let me take just a minute to ask you to please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen or watch, including YouTube. And if this podcast has been encouraging to you, please leave us a good review. Each review really helps us. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We post a lot of great content there. I'm excited to have Amy Harrell Smith with us today. Amy and her husband have 4 children and began homeschooling 11 years ago and never looked back. Amy has a heart to encourage parents to take the homeschool plunge and also to encourage current homeschoolers to stay the course. You can find her on her YouTube channel where she encourages new and veteran homeschool moms, and she also offers many resources to homeschool parents on her website, wiserhomeschool.com. So stay tuned. I think you'll really be encouraged by this episode of the Zan Tyler podcast. This podcast is brought to you by BJU Press Homeschool. Homeschooling is an exciting adventure we take with our children. One of the most challenging parts of this journey is choosing the curriculum you want to use. BJU Press Homeschool is a curriculum you can trust. All the books, resources, and videos have been designed with you and your child in mind. Their curriculum is educationally robust and rich, taking into account that children have different learning styles, strengths, and needs. Mom, you are in charge. BJU Press Homeschool is here to come alongside and support you. Do you need help with the teaching load, or is there a subject you just don't want to teach? Their amazing video courses are available for all grades and almost every subject. BJU Press Homeschool believes that homeschooling can produce a new generation of students who know God, love their neighbors, and stand firm in their faith. For more information, go to bjupresshomeschool.com. That's bjupresshomeschool.com. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to get into this conversation because I know there's so many things you have to share with moms and dads today that will really bless them. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Zan. It is such a privilege and an honor. I'm glad to be here.
Tell us just a little bit about your family and what led y'all to homeschool to begin with.
Sure. So I have 4 children, my husband and I do. They are very loud, all of them. You'd think you'd get one introvert in the bunch, and they're not. My husband's the introvert in the 6 of us. So our kids are currently, the youngest is 8. Then we have an 11-year-old, a 13-year-old, and our daughter just had Sweet 16 last week.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah, so we have quite the bundle there. And what led us to homeschooling, I always say we kind of fell into it unintentionally. I don't say accidentally, because I believe whenever you're leaning on the Lord to direct your steps, nothing is going to be accidental like that. But we weren't necessarily planning to be a homeschool family. It was something I guess we just really hadn't given a lot of thought to. And then all of a sudden, it was the summer 12 years ago when our daughter was turning 4, and she seemed like she was ready for some formal education or some structured education. Like, she really enjoyed learning. She was doing really well with, her ABCs and counting, things like that. And honestly, we went to check out a preschool, and she already knew everything that they were going to be teaching that year. So I wasn't really thrilled about sending her away to school yet anyway. Like I said, she was just turning 4. And so I said, well, what if we just tried homeschooling? And my husband agreed, let's just try it for a year. And that's how we started, and we never looked back.
Oh, that is amazing. So is she a senior now, or has she already graduated?
She is a senior now, and she is determined to graduate by the end of December so that she can be class of 2024.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And she's still 16, is that correct?
Just turned 16 last week.
Yep, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So you have been homeschooling now for about 11 years?
Yep. Next month will be 12. We actually started in October that year. So I always tell people it's never too late. If you feel like you're behind the ball getting started, just go for it anyway.
Oh, that is so true. There's never a bad time to start homeschooling.
No, never.
So, what was that first year like for you when you were just starting to homeschool? How did you prepare? Now, did you only have the one, or did you have two children at that point?
So she was 4. Our next one was 2.
Okay.
And within a couple of months, we were expecting the third one.
Okay.
And I was working full time. So it was a kind of crazy year. I can't say I really had a ton of preparation. I just sort of dove into the deep end.
Yeah,
found my way out.
That's what we did too. That's what we did too. Yeah. Yeah. So how was that first year?
It was really wonderful. My daughter is kind of textbook oldest child, take charge, self-motivated. She loves learning. She was like me, kind of a school geek. Like, she loved it all. So I got her the BJU curriculum, the videos, because again, I had a toddler, was pregnant with another one, working full time. I felt like I had to have help. So we got the BJU K-5 curriculum, and she loved sitting there. I've got pictures of her in our little table in our townhouse. It was the dining room table. That was our school space and our food space and everything else. And she sat there and she loved it. And so she would do her beginnings videos and her reading with Mrs. Walker and all of the things. And she actually finished K-5. I think we started in October and she was done by April. She just blazed through it.
That's amazing. Yeah. So now, did you continue to work, and did that work well? Were you working at home, or were you working outside the home?
So I was in a ministry position that I held for 18 years with our church. The first 3 were volunteer, and then I was full-time up until our third child was born. So almost a year into our homeschooling journey, I was working full-time. So during the week, it was from home, and then, of course, church services on the weekends and events during the week. But then when he was born, summer of 2013, I went part-time, and I was part-time up until last year.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, we have so many working moms now who homeschool. I know they'll be encouraged to hear you say that. It really is nice when you can have a hybrid of some of the work at home.
Absolutely.
And some of the work out of the home. So that is great. So what do you tell new parents now when they're coming to you and they want advice on how to get started in homeschooling? What do you tell them?
When they're coming to me for advice, one of the first things that I try to do is encourage them in their confidence. And it may not be something that they realize they need. They may be looking for the 1, 2, 3s of what to do. But I feel like you have to have a mindset of confidence in your decision as you get started, and just have that foundation to build on. Because once you know that you can do this, which you can, then all of the logistics become more feasible in your mind. They're not as intimidating. So I try to kind of get ahead of the curve and go against that overwhelming feeling that we're all going to feel in the beginning, in the middle, like throughout. The overwhelming feeling is going to come against you no matter what. So you really need that foundation of confidence in your decision that you're doing this for the best of your child. So that's really where I start.
And, no matter how long you've homeschooled, you have those feelings. It doesn't matter if you're new, or like you were saying, you've homeschooled for 12 years or 20 years, or it doesn't matter. You have days that are going to be hard. And so you have to tell this story, Amy. I love this story. It may be one of my favorite stories of all time. But no family is perfect, and every child learns differently. So sometimes all your preparation for one child doesn't bleed a whole lot over into another child. So tell us about your third son and when you set him up with videos. Okay, this is my favorite.
Okay, so I told you my daughter is textbook first child. Well, then we have 3 boys after her. So they kind of function as their own little set of, the 3 amigos or whatever. So my oldest son also functions a lot like an oldest child. He's very self-sufficient, take charge, get things done. Then we have my third child, my second son, Isaac. And he is textbook middle child, okay? He wants to get away with everything he can find to get away with. He will find any loophole. Like, I understand now why the law of Moses had over 600 laws in it, because these people are like my son and they needed every single caveat,
Yeah.
If the livestock does this and it gets hurt, you have to do this. And I mean, because he will find the loophole and he will exploit it. And all of a sudden
Yes.
I'm making a new rule that I never thought about before. So when we had started him in school, I was feeling pretty confident. I thought, look, I've got two others that I'm homeschooling. They're doing great. They've got the videos. They're self-sufficient. They just go, go, go. We'll just do the same thing with Isaac. Well, I think he was about 5 years old, so he must have only been in about kindergarten or first grade. And I had stepped out of the room, left him watching his videos, and I came back in to one of his siblings tattling on him. Look at Isaac over there. And I look over and he's sitting at this little desk that we had, and he has his iPad in front of him watching the video on mute. And I said, Isaac, what are you doing? He said, you told me I had to watch the video. You didn't tell me I had to listen to it. So a new rule was born that day in our house. You will watch and listen to your school videos. But really, it gave me some insight through all that. And I realized, okay, Isaac learns better one-on-one. He craves one-on-one attention. Sit down with him on the couch and explain the math concept, and he'll get it like that. But you make him go sit in the front of a video, and he'll do it, but he's not going to enjoy it as much. We've really had to adapt because, like I said, I was working. I couldn't give him my undivided attention with 3 other siblings. I had to be able to use some video help too. So we've really been able to adapt into like a hybrid with him and then eventually with the others as well.
Right. Yeah, yes. And I mean, it is so much the case that you will have some children that things work with and other children that they don't. And those auditory kinesthetic learners, I had my oldest child, I don't know that he ever sat still. And he was always talking, which is how we got into homeschooling. He just as this one PhD I read said, that auditory kinesthetic learners, they learn by moving and talking. Neither one of them are acceptable in classrooms. And so sometimes I wonder what Ty would have done, because he was so delightful and so much fun, but he had to talk and he had to move and listen. And I was working with a tutor one time with the boys in science just to make sure they were where they needed to be. This is before the days of co-ops and video classes, and you're all by yourself in this venture. And then my second son was like, Mom, give me my books, leave me alone so I can learn something. And he was very science oriented. And so I just remember this tutor looking at me and saying, Miss Tyler, are you sure you've taught them the same things? Did you use the same books? Did you have a different teacher? Because what they have learned is so uniquely different from each other, And we did talk about that. If Ty doesn't talk about it, it doesn't lodge in his head. And so taking tests, a lot of times taking the auditory test, do great. Give him a multiple choice test that he had to sit down by himself and do. Not so good. That's the great thing about homeschooling is you can really encourage your children. So one of the things I want to talk to you about is your ebook. And I love the title, so I'm going to make sure I get it right. 5 Keys to Unshakable Confidence in Starting Your Homeschool. So, and this says in starting your homeschool, but I want to tell parents this ebook is really for anybody. Sometimes you have a new situation where you're starting to homeschool a child who has special needs or learns differently, or you're starting high school, or you're burned out. I mean, those things can come upon you when you least expect it. And sometimes you do just need a boost to your confidence. So tell us what led you to write this ebook and what the 5 steps are.
Okay, thank you. I wrote it about a year ago when I just started launching this venture called Wiser Homeschool. And really the goal was to try to help instill confidence, like we mentioned before, to get ahead of that feeling of overwhelm that really tries to set in when you're first starting and you feel like you have no idea what you're doing. But I'm really encouraged that you said that, because I felt like it was for people throughout their homeschooling journey, not just in the beginning, because at any time that self-doubt can try to creep in. And
Absolutely.
I think it was just a little over a year ago that I started feeling like I want to do something to help other parents. I've been in my own little homeschooling bubble for a while now, just doing my own thing. And I've had friends along the way who have asked for help, but maybe I could do something on a broader scale and really put some materials out there to help equip others. So that was really how it started. And I started with what I felt like was the most important key of all to your confidence is know your why. Know what your purpose is in doing this, because if you can go back to that at any moment, that's going to help you overcome all of the obstacles that will try to shake your confidence. So really, when it comes down to it, my why is this is what I feel is in the best interest of my children. This is what I believe is the best path for them to learn and to grow and develop at their highest potential. So I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind and on some days in the forefront of my mind to help keep that confidence in place.
I love that you talk about that, because it's interesting. In several of the workshops I do when I'm speaking, it's always the why. And I just interviewed for the podcast Gerald Hubner, who's been involved in homeschooling for 35 years. And I said, Gerald, what is your best advice to homeschool parents? And he said, know your why.
Oh, wow.
And so I love hitting on that, because I don't think you can talk about it too much.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I would encourage people, if you can, take a day away before you start your school year and fast and pray if you do that. If not, just take a day to really pray before the Lord over each child and be recommitted to what your why is. And I think every year it can change. Your why. I mean, you always want what's best for your child. That why doesn't change.
Right.
But, sometimes you have a child who's struggling. Sometimes you have a child who's ahead. Sometimes you may be taking a lot of trips, or a grandmother who's sick. And so, your years will change.
Exactly.
And maybe your years will change, but your why will not. You'll just add to it and develop it.
Yeah. Your emphasis, I think, will change through the
Yes,
seasons.
that's a good way to. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it. Yes, and when you write it down, I mean, you know how Scripture says it talks about writing it on your walls, and but write it down or print it out and post it. I can remember when I started, I would give anything if I could find this paper from my first year of when I started homeschooling, because somebody told me to do that. And I know, I mean, it was just a one-page handwritten piece of paper, but I know I wore it out, because I remember getting that thing in the middle of the night. We didn't have any support. We were homeschooling alone, and I just had to keep going back and reading the why. So I love that. You're absolutely
That's really
right.
excellent advice. It's excellent. The Bible said, like you said, write it down, write the vision, and make it plain. Yeah. And sometimes we do that as much for our own benefit as for anybody else.
That's exactly right. Because if you don't have self-doubt, some people in your life will help you doubt. They're happy, they're happy to fill in those blanks,
Yes, they are.
So one of the funny things that happened when we started homeschooling Amy, so we were, we were threatened with jail. We didn't know anybody in the world who homeschooled.
Oh, wow.
There was no internet, no support groups, nobody to go to for help. And so I can remember it was like at 2:00 in the morning, every morning I had this alarm clock that went off, and I just would replay every negative thing people said to me that day, which was a lot, and every self-doubt I had. And so my husband's my best friend. I'd wake him up and I'd say, I know you want to hear this, so talk to me. I'm a verbal processor, so help me process this. So after this went on for about 3 or 4 weeks, which Joe was really gracious because he likes his sleep, he looked at me and he says, Zan, Jesus is always awake.
Nice.
So, it really hurt my feelings, but it changed my prayer life.
Yeah.
And it taught me where to take those self-doubts. I mean, to the cross, to Jesus. And
Right.
but it helps if you have that why nailed down. Rehearse it, rehearse it, rehearse it, rehearse it. So
That's so good.
I don't mean to sound like a broken record, because you do such a good job of covering that. But I just want to say
Well, thank
amen,
you,
Amy.
no, but I love that. And I'm so thankful for everybody like you who did go through the homeschooling process when it wasn't as easy as it is today. Things are so accessible now with the world so connected that it's easy to forget how difficult it was just
True.
not even that long ago, before all of
Right,
these resources were at our fingertips.
Yes, it's a different day, and there were some things that were great about it, but the worst part of it was really homeschooling alone, especially if, like you and I are, you're extroverts, and so that really makes it different. Well, real quick, if you don't mind, I don't want to spoil the ebook. The ebook is free, and you can get it at wiserhomeschool.com.
Yes.
But if you don't mind just giving us a little bit of an overview, I think that would be great.
Sure. So in the ebook, we talk about 4 obstacles to your confidence that are pretty sure to hit anybody who tries to start homeschooling. And then I hit those back with 5 keys. Figure we're going to identify 4 obstacles and we're going to come back with even more keys to overcoming them. So the keys themselves, like I said, know your why. Know who's driving the bus.
I love that. Yes.
It is so easy to forget that you are in charge of your homeschool. And yes, I know state requirements. We've got to think about those things, but those don't have to govern every moment of every day. You are the one, you're the teacher, the principal, the guidance counselor. You decide what happens in your homeschool. The third one is know how to handle stereotypes. They're out there, they're pervasive, they're misinformed, they're misguided, but you just need to know how to handle them. Just like a batter practicing batting practice to get good at hitting that ball. The ball's going to come, so just be ready to hit it when it comes, and to know how to do it graciously and, with a lot of mercy and love for whoever you're talking to. The fourth key is know that things are going to change, and that's a good thing. A lot of us like to get all of our ducks in a row and get a plan together and then execute the plan, and be prepared so that your world doesn't come crashing down when your plan has to change, because it probably will.
Yes, that's
right. Or when your approach has to change, like with Isaac in his videos. So, and then the fifth key is know what you don't know, or at least know that you don't know everything, and you don't have to. I've seen parents who try to dive in and do it all themselves. And they want to create it all from scratch. And I really encourage them to not do that, because that's a good way to set yourself up for burnout. Starting homeschooling is a big journey in and of itself. So go ahead and get the help that you need, or that you don't know you need. Just go ahead and get help, get contacts, get resources that can help support you, because you're going to hit things that you need help with. And that's totally okay.
I think that is such good advice, because there's something in us, if we're insecure about homeschooling anyway, we want to think, okay, I need to do this on my own. I don't need to admit to anybody that I need help. They'll tell me to stop homeschooling. I don't know. It's just interesting. But you are so true about asking for help. And that's why I love your ebook.
Appreciate that.
Amy, one of the things you talk about a lot, I know in your ebook and probably when you're counseling women as well, are some of the barriers to homeschooling. So why don't you tell us what some of those are, and then I want to park on the one that you call number 4 for a little bit, because I was so happy to see you include that. So tell us a little bit about some of the barriers you see for homeschooling moms when they make the plunge.
Well, I think the first obstacle barrier is peer pressure. And it's something that it's very high on our radar to help our kids combat that. But we forget that we deal with that too. And especially anytime you take a stance that's going against the majority norm, you're going to hit some of this peer pressure. And, it could be someone just raising an eyebrow when, they ask your kid, oh, what grade are you in? And they say, oh, well, I'm kind of in 3rd and 4th because we homeschool. Or it could be, the waitress at the restaurant when she asks. I mean, people ask all the time, especially this time of year. Oh, what grade are you going into? Or what do you do this? Or what are you doing on summer break? And, oh, well, we homeschool and we don't have summer break. We depending on your situation.
Right, right.
So that peer pressure can come from strangers, or it can come from people very close to you, which of course is a lot harder to deal with.
It's a lot more painful.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
When it's your parents or your siblings or somebody just super close that's questioning
or your pastor.
Your judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
questioning your judgment on what you're doing for your children, that can be really, really unsettling, really destabilizing in terms of your confidence. So that, I think, is one of the biggest obstacles just to be aware of and kind of prepare yourself for how to stand in the face of, if that makes sense.
Oh, goodness, absolutely. One of the things that happened to us, and I'm telling parents this because I wasn't aware of it. I can remember one time Joe was out of town. We were at our pastor's house, and we were good friends. And I ran upstairs to run to the restroom or something, and I came back, and he was questioning the boys. Are you really learning something? Do you like it? And
wow.
I was so hurt and mad. I mean, we just got up. We said thank you for the dinner and left because I had to go collect myself.
Wow.
But the one thing, and then years later, the boys told me, Mom, people would ask us about homeschooling in front of you and Dad, but they loved to get us by ourselves. And you don't know how many, now it was different in the early years, I'm sure, but you don't know how many people sort of interrogated us if you'd leave a room or if then they're out older and driving. They always wanted to talk to them about it away from us. Give us the real dirt. Do you really like it? Do you feel gypped? Do you feel like you're missing out on things? And so one of the things I love to tell parents is not only do you need to prepare on how to answer questions, you need to prepare your children. Because they're going to be in the same situation but not have the wherewithal you do. So make sure, when you're going home and maybe your in-laws aren't supportive and you're going home for the holidays, know that it's unfair, but they're going to be asked, what have you been studying this year? And so prepare them. Talk about it on the way home. Do you remember this book we read? And do you remember this study we did on the solar system? And do you remember these field trips we took? Arm them with the information. I mean, one year we had done all this work on all the monuments in D.C., and then we went to D.C., and my boys are asked, they were little, so what'd you do in school this year? Nothing. I mean, what about like learning all the monuments in Greek? I don't know.
Right.
So and then let them practice with you on why they're homeschooled.
Yeah.
And why are you homeschooled? And make sure they can articulate it. Because
good.
They will be asked, just like you will be asked.
Yeah.
So
that's great, though. Yeah. I mean, I've tried to do that subconsciously, I think, and just in letting my kids understand that it's a privilege and it's an honor that we get to homeschool, and letting them know that this isn't, second best, that we're doing this for their good and the wise, and not trying to be derogatory to anybody else who chooses something else for their children, but letting our kids know that this is really special and, giving them kind of that confidence as well. That's so great that you pointed that out.
So what are some of the other barriers you found?
Well, I think one of the next largest obstacles is questioning your own abilities. And that's why I've hit it quite a few times on social media and on my YouTube channel. And I've taken a lot of heat for it when I tell parents you don't need to be a certified teacher to be qualified to teach your child.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of pushback out there when you say that. But you have to remember that you are not trying to achieve the same exact objectives that a teacher in a classroom is trying to achieve. That teacher has been trained on how to handle multiple children at once, 20 or so in their classroom at a time, from different family backgrounds, from different experiences. They're having to deal with parents. They're having to deal with their bosses, with learning standards that are being put on them. They have all of these things to deal with. You only have to deal with these children
That's right.
who are your own.
That's
You're
right.
the one who loves them and cares for them more than anybody else on the planet. You know them better than anybody else on the planet. You are in an entirely different position than a teacher in a classroom who's trying to achieve mass communication. You're not trying to do that. So stop with the qualification debate in your own mind.
Yes, that's
you don't
exactly
have to be,
right. Yes.
be trained or qualified in that way. Who taught your kid how to eat? Who taught your kid how to walk? How come all of a sudden when they turn 5 years old, you feel like you're not qualified to teach them math and reading and things like that?
Yeah, that's right.
That's the next one that I hear a lot is just people. I've even seen on chat groups sometimes, well, I'm going to start homeschooling next year. I'm thinking about going back to college. And I'm like, what? I mean, sure, more power to you if you want to go back to college, but you don't have to do that to homeschool your child.
That's right.
And to give them a quality education. So then the third obstacle, I think, is just lacking information, just needing to get out there and find information. And then when you do try to get it, it's so overwhelming because Google is such a huge pool of information. You don't even know how to wade through it.
Yes,
so
that's
that
right.
can definitely shake your confidence. And then the fourth one that you were mentioning that we want to get to is what I call nostalgia. And just remembering, especially if you were raised in public school or private school, if you had any kind of good memories associated with that, if that's still kind of in your mind the version of normal for education, then it's very easy to second guess yourself. And I think that's what I've dealt with more down through the years more consistently is kind of those feelings of, passing notes in class or saying hi to your friend by blockers or, sitting in the cafeteria and all of those experiences that you're not going to have in the same way in a homeschool that can really shake your confidence and make you question your decision. I've even known of someone who chose not to homeschool simply because they wanted their child to have prom.
Thank you for joining Amy and me today for part 1 of this 2-part episode. If you want to get in touch with Amy, you can find her on her YouTube channel, Amy Harrell Smith, or her website, wiserhomeschool.com. You can find me at zantyler.com and on social media. May God continue to bless you and your family in your homeschool journey. And until next time, bye.